Coming up, Michigan needed a last-minute field goal to stay unbeaten. This is Locked On Game to Game Big Ten.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
You're listening to Locked On Game to Game Big Ten, local experts taking you from game to game in Week 12 of the NCAA season. I'm your host, Jourdan Black, and thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. The Illinois Fighting Illini knew it would be a tough test against Michigan to try to keep their name in the hat for the Big Ten West. But instead, a last-minute field goal kept Michigan undefeated after what was a strong effort from Brett Bielema's team. Locked On Big Ten recaps the finish from the Big House.
Michigan 19, Illinois 17. Wolverines avoid a big upset going into the big game next week. I'm Nate Dickinson here with Locked On Big Ten, and it looked like this game could be all Michigan early when Blake Corum was chunking off big yardage early on against the Illini, and Michigan scored on its first drive on offense and was driving down the field again. But Illinois settled in, was able to figure things out for a little bit at least with Blake Corum, and got things to just 7-3 in favor of the Wolverines at halftime. From there, in the second half, Illinois' running back Chase Brown took over. 2 touchdowns to get Illinois the lead late and put Michigan on its toes, but Wolverine stayed composed, bent, did not break, and ended up getting itself field goals throughout the second half to get it the win, including one with less than a minute to go to get the 19-17 victory again. Michigan avoids disaster by beating Illinois by just a couple of points after both running backs do their jobs.
PJ Fleck has faced Kirk Ferentz and Iowa 6 times since taking over as Minnesota's head coach, and he's lost 6 times. Saturday marked the 4th one-possession loss for the Gophers against the Hawkeyes, and Locked On Golden Gophers and Hawkeyes recap the loss that extended the streak and put Minnesota out of the Big Ten title conversation.
I have no words. The Gophers fall 13-10 against Iowa. It's a tough one. Most 263 yards. Still can't get it done. Where do we go from here? Wisconsin's up next. Listen to Locked On Golden Gophers, where we'll talk about this loss. We'll talk about how we prep to end the season and where do we go. This is Kane Robb with Locked On Golden Gophers.
The improbable Iowa Hawkeyes find a way once again, a 13-10 win over Minnesota as the pig stays down south. I'm Trent Condon with the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Well, it wasn't always pretty. Iowa gives up well over 300 yards on the ground defensively, and late in the game, it was the defense coming up once again. 2 forced turnovers, a forced fumble, and then an interception. Though it should have been a pick-6 touchdown for Jack Campbell, the offense does just enough. They get the field goal, and they win it 13-10 and then hold on for the victory. The Iowa Hawkeyes now, after a rough start to the season, now are 1 win away from winning the West Division title and another appearance in Indianapolis as they'll await the winner of Michigan, Ohio State. Whole lot more coming up for you this week on Locked On Hawkeyes. Later today, Locked On Now, we will have an instant reaction podcast. All here on Locked On.
Iowa State had to hold off a late comeback from the Maryland Terrapins, but got the final win to set up the undefeated matchup with Michigan next week. Now, Maryland had the ball with a chance to take the lead on the last possession, and Locked On Buckeyes tells you how the Terps got closer to beating Ohio State than any other team has this season.
Breathe in, breathe out. Is everybody okay? That's what I'm saying to a lot of my Ohio State friends right now, because many of them are not okay with the performance they watched from Ohio State. It was still a win for the Buckeyes, as the Buckeyes beat the Maryland Terrapins 43-30. What's up, guys? My name is Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes, and once again, the Buckeyes play weird football after the bye week, and once again on the road, the Buckeyes play uninspired football throughout a portion of the game. It's weird what we have seen from Ohio State after the bye week. Issues running the ball, not getting a consistent push on the O-line. The secondary getting exposed with one-on-one coverage in deep throws. It's odd. Another injury from Trayvon Henderson. It's happened numerous times this year where he gets hurt. Oh, yeah, on the road. Penalties, they come up as well. 11 penalties. for 97 yards for Ohio State. Not a good look. When the Buckeyes needed somebody to step up, Dallin Hayden stepped up in a big way. 27 carries, 146 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. Lathan Ransom added in a big TFL and a block punt later in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, on Maryland's final drive of the game, Zach Harrison had a sack, followed it up with a strip sack, which leads to a scoop and score for Seal Chambers. But the Buckeyes remain undefeated. They are 11-0, and I can't wait to see what happens a week from today as the Buckeyes host the Wolverines in the shoe.
Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game Big Ten. I'm your host, Jourdan Black. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. The Wisconsin Badgers went into the fourth quarter down 11 points and scored 12 unanswered to just barely get by the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Iowa's win may have just taken Wisconsin out of the Big Ten West race, but Locked On Badgers now has a bowl-eligible team to recap for us.
It took a fourth quarter comeback and the gutsiest drive of the year, but the Badgers did it. They are bowl eligible. Hi, I'm Ryan Herrings, your host of Locked On Badgers. And throughout the season, the defense has mostly carried the water, and the Wisconsin Badgers offense has just failed to deliver in the big moments they needed to. They almost did that again this Saturday against the Huskers, but that big fourth quarter drive when they needed it the most, down 14-9, they came through behind a really solid running game with 3 running backs averaging more than 4.5 yards per carry. Braylon Allen gutting it out through injury. Ches Malusi coming back. Isaac Grendo still being that reliable option. The Badgers offensive line in the run blocking game really stepped up. They had over 230 yards rushing, and they really drove the ball in that fourth quarter and propelled the Badgers to a win, still mostly carried by the defense. The pivotal moment, Graham Mertz plunging in from 2 yards out. The Badgers needed it. They absolutely needed it. 15-14, nail-biter victory, but they are bowl eligible. It's a big feather in Jim Leonard's cap. For more, continue to check out Locked On Badgers for your team every single day.
The Hoosiers and Spartans needed 2 overtimes to decide things after Indiana came back from a 31-14 deficit in regulation. Locked On Hoosiers reviews Indiana's first win in more than 2 months.
I've watched a lot of IU football games in my lifetime, but I don't think I've ever seen one like that. This is Jacob, host of Locked On Hoosiers. Indiana wins 39-31 in double overtime in Michigan State on Saturday in a win that is beyond description. The Hoosiers were outgained by almost 300 yards. They only threw for 31 total yards on the day, a drastic difference for a program that earlier this season threw over 60 times in a single game. They trailed by 17 at halftime. They trailed by 17 halfway through the third quarter. But this team finally did something it hasn't done for most of the year, and that was respond. The offense had more explosive plays in this game than they've had perhaps all season. The defense finally started to look something like a Tom Allen defense late in the second half. Special teams with Jalen Lucas getting a kickoff return touchdown sparked this comeback, and there was a lot of luck involved as well. Michigan State missing a chip shot field goal that would have won the game as time expired. But look, this is a program that has had a lot of lowlights this season. To get a win like this, to bring the old brass spittoon back to Bloomington, this one feels really good and really special for everyone around the IU program. We're going to fully recap this game, the madness that it was, on Monday's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. So be sure you guys are subscribed.
It's a 2-team race in the Big Ten West going into the final week of the season, with Purdue and Iowa winning to stay at 3 Big Ten losses apiece. The Boilermakers took down Northwestern to keep their hopes alive, and Locked On Northwestern looks at a loss that makes it 10 in a row for the Wildcats.
Just when you thought Northwestern wouldn't have any more fight this year, they show up, have some fight at Purdue, but come up short yet again. Hey, everybody, this is Carter Bird with the Locked On Northwestern podcast. Northwestern falls again, 10th in a row on the road at Purdue, 17-9. But boy, did they fight. The defense showed up, held Purdue to 17 points and below 300 yards of offense. The offense going with a new quarterback in this one in Cole Freeman. Were able to hang in there. Evan Hull got going there after a slower start. He had 22 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown, but it was not enough as Northwestern lost the turnover battle 3-0. and ended up falling short 17-9. Just one possession loss again for Northwestern. For more, check out Locked On Northwestern on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, your team every day.
That's all for today on Locked On Game to Game Big Ten. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Subscribe to Locked On Big Ten and your team's Locked On podcast for more football and basketball coverage every day of the week. Thanks for listening this week. I'm Jourdan Black, and this has been Locked On Game to Game.